Appreciate the excellent testimony, and I agree that the more Ukraine succeeds, the better off it is for us in the United States and the West, and I think it's one of the most profoundly important issues that we face in the next year or two. Let me see if I've discovered a little bit of a distance between our witnesses today. Ambassador Burns, you took most of your testimony from an article that you previously wrote in the New York Times, and you went to 4 steps, and then you went beyond that in your oral testimony today to mention that nevertheless, in spite of everything Russia has done and all of our problems, there's still areas of cooperation that we could reach. So would you restate that and be more specific, and then I'll ask General Breedlove and the ambassador to respond to this idea that you have.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Senator. Now, my only point is that I think cold-bloodedly, from the point of view of not only American interests, but Russian interests as well, and wider international interests, it's important for us to continue to engage with Russia on issues like the safety and security of nuclear materials, the danger of nuclear terrorism, the danger of nuclear and radiological materials getting in the wrong hands. Those are issues where I think the United States and Russia, precisely because of our history and our nuclear arsenals and our capability, really do have unique responsibilities. And then I think, as General Breedlove said, I think it's also important for us, even as we did at the worst moments of tension in the Cold War, to sustain a habit of military-to-military communication. So we're avoiding inadvertent collisions, whether it's over the Baltic states or in the Middle East or elsewhere. I think that's just there's practical value in that for us, whatever our profound differences with Russia on many other issues.
General Breedlove, are you on the same page there?
Yes, Senator, there's no air between us in those conversations. I would add things like transparency in exercises. Just yesterday, another major SNAP exercise in Crimea aimed at destabilizing Kiev. Loose nuclear materials, Senator Nunn is working on that hard. It is a place where we can absolutely find, I think, some common ground. And I believe in CT in many ways. They're as worried about what's coming out of Afghanistan and the Balkans as we are. So I do believe, again, reestablishing trust in an incremental way, we need to sit down and work on these things.
Ambassador Vershbow, you're on the same page there?
Yes, Senator, I would agree that even with these fundamental differences, we have to try to manage the relationship, as Ambassador Burns said. And that's, I think, in the short term, maybe the most we can do, which is try to reduce the risks of some accidental incident escalating out of control, trying to persuade the Russians not to give their pilots the freedom to provoke our ships and surveillance planes, more transparency, bringing more observers to exercises so we don't miscalculate in a crisis. And there may be geopolitical issues where we could try to cooperate with Russia, although even, as we've heard, in fighting ISIS, it's not as clear as it might seem that the Russians really have the same objectives in Syria or other parts of the Middle East as we do. But we should test Putin on whether he's actually able to contribute something real, and we don't have to trade the sovereignty of Ukraine in order to get him to cooperate on ISIS. If he wants to do that, he should do it on its merits.
Okay, thank you very much. Will one of you comment, or all of you comment, on the value of OSCE in all of this? You know, OSCE is a 57-nation group. The United States and Canada are members. It's consensus-based, and it's been challenged in recent years by a far more aggressive Russia. The organization's highest profile engagement remains the fielding of an 1,100-person special monitoring mission to Ukraine, an unarmed civilian mission that serves as the international community's eyes and ears in the conflict zone. Of course, there are many other duties of OSCE, but what value should we place on OSCE's continuing role in the European security architecture? Ambassador Burns.
Yeah, I'm glad to start, Senator. I mean, I guess I would say, for all the limitations of the OSCE as a big, sprawling institution, as you described, I think it has continuing value. First, because it embodies, you know, some of the core values that we share with our European allies and partners in terms of, you know, sovereignty of states, you know, the inviolability of borders, so that big states...
Those Helsinki principles.
Right, so that big states don't just get to grab parts of smaller states just because they can. And so for all the limitations of the institution, I think its core value is because it really does embody the Helsinki principles, and it's important for us to continue to invest in that. It also does good work in terms of the monitoring function that you described in Ukraine and elsewhere.
General?
Senator, if I could just add a much more tactical, and I'm sorry for that observation. There are limits, and I couldn't agree with that more. But occasionally, with some of the fake news that was created in the Donbass and other places as Russia invaded, even though OSCE was challenged in it, often it was the source of the real news of what was actually going on the ground. And so, again, it has challenges, but it also provides some pretty good input for us occasionally.
I would agree that OSCE still has value, particularly because of the norms and values that it upholds, even though the Russians are violating a lot of those right now. But it gives us a basis on which to challenge their misbehavior. Its practical value may have declined because the Russians have sort of turned against OSCE. They don't really like its efforts to promote free elections and transparency in political processes, since that's the antithesis of what their system now represents. The Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, I think, has been very, very courageous in trying to make the disengagement work even half well. But even as the Russians authorize missions like that, they shoot down the UAVs that have been purchased by that mission. They threaten some of the monitors. They deny them access to sensitive areas when they're bringing in lots of weaponry. So OSCE is challenged, but I don't see any alternative right now in trying to manage a conflict like in eastern Ukraine.
Thank you.